back. I think as a business channel, we just moved from one event to the other. We put behind the Fed event, and now we'll be tracking Maruti Suzuki, where the minority shareholders will be voting on whether they approve of that Gujarat plan. To talk more about it and what we're picking up, whether that deal will go through or not, Sonia joins in with more. Sonia?
Hi, Rima. Thanks for that. Well, sources in the mutual fund industry have told CNBC TV18 that there will be no negative impact on the company's earnings because of this plant, and that most of the mutual funds have either voted in favor of the plant or have stayed neutral. So that's very important because that will be a big boost for Maruti Suzuki. Very few mutual funds have objected to this deal. That's what sources tell us. And the management in the last couple of months has ensured that minority shareholders' interests are well taken care of. In fact, the minority shareholders are now convinced that there will be no negative impact on financials like the earnings, the margins or the cash flow because of this new Gujarat plant. If you remember, there was this big concern about a new business model where, Suzuki would be the 100% subsidiary and then Maruti would just be in a contract agreement and eventually, selling the products. So the mutual funds are still concerned about this new business model and don't know how it will pan out. But Maruti has given them an assurance that there will be no negative impact on financials. Also, the servicing of the products will be done by the listed company, which is Maruti. So in a sense, in the longer run, it could perhaps even be EPS accretive for the company because they have, the question that was being asked was, if Maruti is sitting on 25,000 crores of cash, then why can't they use it to put up the plant? But now that they are not spending that money, they can perhaps deploy that money, in order to get optimal returns for shareholders. So perhaps in the longer run, it could be EPS accretive as well.
All right, then a bit of a positive coming in there for Maruti Suzuki, so watch out on that front as well. I think the stock is still marginally lower, but as Sonia said, it could be margin accretive as well going ahead. But on that note, let's hear out the management as well.
Almost all shareholders, during our meetings with them, were pretty much satisfied that, yes, what we were saying would really mean that the proposal would substantially benefit them going forward. So I doubt we missed out any major ones. And as I said, that they all seem to be quite convinced that this proposal was going to be in their interest.
All right, then let's get back to our movers and shakers segment and all the stocks that are buzzing around. Let's start off with Mangalam on Somani Ceramics. Mangalam?
That's right, Nigel. So Somani Ceramics up 15% as we speak. Perhaps valuations catching up, because if you look at it in the last few months, Somani has actually corrected 20% from April levels of 465, while its counterpart Kajaria, which is the industry leader, has surged about 50% from August levels of 651 rupees. So if you look at the valuation picture now, Somani after today's move trades at close to 22.5 times FY17 earnings, while Kajaria trades at 30 times FY17 earnings. Serra also trades at a premium to Somani. So Kajaria actually trades at a 33% premium to Somani Ceramics, and that is because of which we are seeing a valuation catch up. Because if you look at it, the 5-year top line growth for both Kajaria and Somani have been absolutely identical, but the bottom line growth has differed because it's the EBITDA margins. Kajaria, for instance, FY15 had an EBITDA margins of close to 16%, while Somani was less than half of that at 7%, because of which now you'll see a divergence in the 5-year net profit growth. In the last 5 years, Kajaria's net profit has grown at 37.5%, while the net profit for Somani has grown by just 18%, which is why we are seeing a bit of a discount at which Somani trades at. But if you look at it in the first half itself, the growth for Kajaria has slowed down, while that of Somani has gone higher. So the short point being, Kajaria's upside after the 50% move is limited, while Somani can catch up as the margins are improving and as the brand's acceptance gains slowly, and because of which we're seeing the up move on Somani Ceramics.
Thanks, Mangalam. That's great peer group analysis. Somani, in fact, has crossed its 200-day moving average with the 14% gain that we're staring at today. But Ekta, over to you on IDBI Bank. What are you picking up on the bank's asset quality?
Well, there's some statements or I did learn from my sources about IDBI Bank where they are a part of the IVRCL consortium. Now, they could be, in terms of IVRCL and the STR package, IVRCL could be, or the lenders could be looking to sell individual SPVs of IVRCL or the company or the promoter holding as a whole. However, there is no buyer which is still finalized for IVRCL. IDBI Bank is also a part of Monnet Power SDR as well, where the discussion discussions for the STR are also on for Monnet Power as of now, but there is no finalization in terms of a buyer there as yet. Remember that they are not a part of Visa Steel as well as Electro Steel consortiums. Separately, the bank is looking aggressively in terms of selling or looking at eventually selling loans to asset reconstruction companies. Remember that they have not sold any loans to asset reconstruction companies this entire fiscal, and it might come through in the last quarter of the fiscal where they could sell loans to asset reconstruction companies. We'll get more details possibly by the end of this month. And EPC construction sector could be a sector which could see asset reconstruction companies buying off loans from IDBI Bank. Now, additionally, there are reports indicating that, remember that the government is possibly looking to divest its stake in IDBI Bank and looking at more of an Axis Bank kind of model, and the current holding is at over 75%. They're planning to bring it down sub 50%. Strategic stake sales could be something on the cards, which is something that CNBC TV18 has been reporting multiple times. Now we do understand that the government may transfer the bank's bad loans to a special entity in order to get better valuations.
All right, Ekta. So that's stock, in fact, higher with a good gain of around 5%. But on the flip side, Voltas is sulking on the back of a BofA report. Anisha is standing by. She's going to give us all those details. Anisha?
Well, Bank of America Merrill Lynch suggests that the near-term growth prospects for Voltas are already priced in at the current levels, and that is why they've downgraded the same to an underperform from a buy earlier with a target price of 292. Now, they suggest that the competition in the AC industry has intensified quite a bit, and its peers have been offering other promotional schemes like extended warranties and discounts, which can endanger Voltas' current market share, which is close to around 21%. Now, as a result, Voltas might have to increase their advertising spends, which would put further pressure on the margins. Now, the stock has already rallied close to around 16% in the last 1 month, and the analysts believe that the stock will not be able to sustain the premium valuations that it's trading at right now, which is close to around 26 times the FY17 earnings. That's why they've downgraded the same, and the stock is sulking a bit.
Okay, Anisha, thanks so much for that. On to Mangalam Drugs. Let's pull up a one-year chart of that stock. You've seen it rally from sub-20 rupee levels to 400 rupees. And just in the last few days, the stock has started correcting. Let's pull up a one-year chart. Today, it's locked in a lower circuit of about 5%. But stupendous up move, Nigel, in that particular counter. But it started coming off from the day's high.
That's right. Arima, over the last few days, it has been in lower circuit. And yesterday, if you just look at the large trades that were taking place on the NSE, you'll see that the promoter sold close to around 0.5% stake in the company. Now, the promoter entity is Sri Ras Bihari Trading, that sold close to around 72,000 shares. But as Rima said, if you just take a look at the 52-week low, that should be up for you on the screen. In February 2015, that stock was only around 17 rupees. Then at the beginning of December, it went running away all the way to around 440 rupees. I think we should get both those two rates up for you. And from December 8th onwards, it started correcting. So it's down close to 30%. It's continuously beyond lower circuit for 7 straight sessions. So watch out for this stock currently as well. There are sellers waiting to get out in today's session.
Okay, let's move on to Treehouse Education. That's a stock which seems to have bottomed out around levels of 150, currently at 186. Mangalam, practically every day that stock moves higher. What's the latest news?
That's right. Nigel was talking about Mangalam Drugs, which is seeing lower circuits for the last 7 days. We also saw some lower circuits coming in for Treehouse, but a couple of days ago on the lower circuit, we saw a big chunk being bought in the last hour of trade, and we saw the stock swooning higher from there. And in the last 2-3 days, the stock has been hitting upper circuits constantly. So the news is now the promoters have informed the exchanges that they have released the entire pledge on 1.01 crore shares. Remember, the promoters held about 1.26 crore shares in the company. So in effect, 80% of their shares were pledged. And because of which that was worrying the street, we saw big cuts of close to 70% from the start of this year. And half of that has recovered because the management told us here on CNBC TV18 on November 30th that they are looking at various options to reduce the pledge. So this news that has come, the fact that promoters have released the entire pledge of 80% of their holding, is a big positive for the company, and which is why we're seeing an uptick. Remember, the stock after a 20% up move this month is still down 50% from the start of this year. So because of which we're seeing some value buying on that counter as well. And this big overhang of the promoters being released has come off, and we're seeing an up move on that one, on that account. Back to you. All
right, Mangalam, thanks so much for joining. And let's do a quick recap of all the stocks that are buzzing around. We have Maruti, Somani Ceramics, IDBI Bank, Voltas, Mangalam Drugs, Treehouse, Anu Pharma, as well as Quality.